Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. The recent episode of Ahsoka has given us the long-awaited appearance of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Everything has been building up to this moment, and now that he's here, we can finally start getting some questions and theories answered. One of our predictions that was confirmed in the episode was that Thrawn was planning to ultimately betray Baylan and Shin once they outlived their usefulness, which has curiously come a lot sooner than expected. Baylan clearly still has his plans to serve the Grand Admiral for the time being, but Thrawn has deemed Baylan untrustworthy and full of too many flaws for his liking. His new plan is to simply leave Peridea, stranding the Dark Jedi there if necessary. This seems a bit strange for the Grand Admiral though, who is known for taking advantage of all of the strengths and the strengths of anyone that serves under him. But it seems that Thrawn is now much more wary of the Force, and perhaps has now decided not to make any compromises whatsoever. Yet, this decision by Thrawn speaks to a much larger and more important sentiment that he has. Thrawn hates the dark side. Not the Force itself, but all those affiliated with it, especially with the dark side. We all know that he believes the Jedi don't know how to use the Force as a weapon properly, but to those that apparently do, Thrawn is now going out of his way to keep under control or cut out entirely. So why here at the archives have we come to this conclusion? Well, my friends, it's time to open up another holocron and discuss Thrawn's hatred of the dark side and those that wield it, concerning why he believes that it makes them weak and ultimately dangerous to a grand empire. We have recently talked about how Thrawn's greatest weakness was the Force itself, as he couldn't accurately depict it because he didn't understand it. Thrawn was constantly being caught by surprise when the Force caused strange things to happen, things that came completely out of left field, and therefore that he could not predict. There was absolutely no way that even Thrawn could have accounted for Ezra's sacrifice and using the Purgle to launch them into the unknowns. It was something that was so wild, it was nearly impossible. But these nearly impossible feats and strokes of luck come naturally to the Jedi, and this is something that not even Thrawn can always account for. Interestingly enough though, Thrawn heretofore has shown no indication that he feared the Force or those that wield it in any way. The Jedi he thought were far too idealistic for their own good, and held themselves back from making any true progress that mattered. Their moral weaknesses outweighed their natural gifts, something Thrawn exploited time and time again in both Legends as well as in canon. In Legends, Thrawn took account of Force wielders and how to protect himself from them, using a species known as the Ysalamiri, a reptile that had the ability to project an anti-force field around them. Thrawn decided that this was the best course of action in order to protect himself not only against Luke, but against his mad Jedi, Joruus C'baoth. It was this Dark Jedi where we first see the vestiges of Thrawn's blatant distaste for the dark side itself. He knew of Luke Skywalker's power, and saw him as a serious adversary for taking down the Empire. But with the Ysalamiri by his side, he really didn't worry that much about Luke. It was instead Joruus that occupied some of Thrawn's concern for a time being, somebody that should have been his ally, just like Baylan. One would think that after serving under the Galactic Empire and having been in close contact with both the Emperor as well as Darth Vader, that he would be accepting of their attributes shown by those that wield the dark side itself and the power that it grants. But it was in fact the opposite. Thrawn was very loyal to the Emperor, mostly believing that the man was dangerous but incredibly useful, especially for Thrawn's end goals. Thrawn knew that once he swore loyalty to the Empire, he would uphold that loyalty no matter what, and in turn, he would be greatly rewarded. As for Vader though, there was a time when Sidious decided to bring the two together so that they could work on a mission. Since the two had once been allies in the Clone Wars when Anakin Skywalker was still around, Thrawn admired Vader for his conviction and loyalty to the Empire and the Emperor. It would so be that Vader in turn respected Thrawn for his tactical brilliance. The two worked decently well together, but that wouldn't change Thrawn's views on Vader's methods nor his MO, and how he staunchly disagreed with his use of the dark side. In the book Heir to the Empire, Thrawn makes a snide comment about Darth Vader's leadership style. Captain Pellaeon had a suggestion for a certain situation. Thrawn could tell that he wanted to say something but was holding back. Thrawn though invited the captain to speak, and after much more prodding, Pellaeon finally did. The suggestion turned out to be a good one, and one that Thrawn implemented immediately. When he saw the relief on the captain's face, this is what Thrawn had to say to him. "You served too long under Lord Vader, Captain. I have no qualms about accepting a useful idea merely because it was not my own. My position and ego are not at stake here." This is mostly a critique of the entire way most of the Imperial High Command did things. They were all petty and spiteful, always vying for more power within the ranks. Thrawn had been burned by his environment when a superior officer wouldn't take sound advice because of their ego. Vader exemplified this flaw, mostly because of his belief that his strength in the dark side made him superior to the little worms that served under him. It would be this that Thrawn cited as a major weakness of the Empire itself, and one of the major reasons for its fall, citing that those that wield the dark side lead naturally into pride, something that Thrawn sharply resented because it made them vulnerable. Thrawn valued a collaborative team of people who use their unique talents and skills in the most optimal way together. This was how Thrawn secured most of his victories. His tactical mind combined with the efficiency of his crew won the day 9 times out of 10. He was always looking for another proper perspective and another way of looking at things. Thrawn liked to help out his team by minimizing their weaknesses and improving their strengths. Minimizing weakness did not mean just murdering his subordinates when they failed, but simply using failure as an opportunity for a teaching moment. There was even a time when he had given one officer a promotion despite failing at an important task. He did so because during the task, the officer tried an inventive course correction, but still ultimately failed. Yet, Thrawn recognized his ingenuity and praised him for thinking outside of the box to try and save a bad situation. This environment that Thrawn established caused the underlings to become fanatically loyal to him and trust in everything that he said and did, some of which going on near suicidal missions because they trusted him so thoroughly. Thrawn indeed knew when to use fear to his advantage, but the idea of ruling his subordinate by fear was counterintuitive, and especially was counterintuitive to the kind of structure that Thrawn wanted. Thrawn had already deduced Vader's true identity, and knew that of course Anakin would have needed to have been turned to the dark side by another. This caused Thrawn to swiftly deduce Palpatine's real identity as a Dark Lord of the Sith. Though like Tarkin, Thrawn was smart enough to keep his deductions to himself. But we can see Thrawn's critique of Sidious's ruling style by how Thrawn ran the Empire of the Hand, the empire that Thrawn established in Legends in the Unknown region. Unlike the Galactic Empire, Thrawn's Shadow Empire in the Unknown ruled by respect and mutual gain. Thrawn allowed his conquered planets to continue ruling by government bodies that they had already established, with the only stipulation being that they would be under the protection of Thrawn, and needed to funnel a good portion of their resources into his empire. Thrawn treated people well, accepted non-humans into his ranks, and cared about the well-being of every single stormtrooper, as well as respected his enemies, and promoted a military hierarchy built upon trust, which was logically sound. But this brings us all the way back around to Thrawn's quote about Vader, which was the pride and ambition that the dark side instilled within people. Thrawn saw that the way the Empire was structured, the Imperial High Command would act out of a need of personal glory, and in a couple instances, Thrawn had to wrangle the admirals and commanders in his charge to make sure that they didn't pursue the rebels or break his orders out of a desire for accolades. We saw this happen in the Battle of Atollon, when one of the commanders defied the Grand Admiral in pursuit of glory. Enraged that he had broken formation and jeopardized their entire operation, Thrawn allowed him and his entire ship to die for their foolishness. Thrawn didn't tolerate brainless defiance, especially that which came from a place of pride. This was the kind of backstabbing environment that Sidious encouraged, because it kept all of his underlings from wanting to overthrow him, basically using Sith tactics to keep his generals in line. Not only did Thrawn see this happen constantly though, but he had been on the receiving end of some of this backstabbing during his time climbing the Imperial ranks. And Thrawn wanted to get things done, and everyone around him wanted to play political. But all of this comes back around not only to the dark side, but the Dark Jedi, with this coming to a head when Thrawn had to deal with the overly ambitious Joruus C'baoth, the character that Balin's skull is based off of. The Dark Jedi persistently sauntered around the Chimera, his head held high, pretending that he was in charge. He would even give Thrawn orders and threatened him with his power, dominating the minds of many of Thrawn's officers and crewmen with the dark side of the Force. Obviously, this was unacceptable to the Grand Admiral, but at the time, he needed Joruus's power with battle meditation. Because of this, he stood with Joruus for a time, who who even at one point dared to force choke Thrawn from another ship when he was angry. Once this happened, their relationship changed, and Thrawn found a way to put Joruus in his place, the Ysalamiri. No longer could the mad dark Jedi Master touch the Grand Admiral with the Force, and now it was Thrawn who was giving the orders. Even after Thrawn upheld his end of the deal by delivering Luke to Joruus, the Dark Jedi Master still blamed him, and was furious with Thrawn, blaming him for Luke's eventual escape. Thrawn learned a valuable lesson working with Joruus. Those with too much ambition and power for their own good can prove to be far more dangerous than any Jedi, and in the end, ultimately hated those who were drunk off of their own power. Although he hasn't had a similar experience in canon, he has had to deal with the follies of the environment that the dark side creates in the Empire. Thrawn is the one trying to do all the work of making a difference for the galaxy, and those under darkness just want to do it for themselves. This now makes sense why he does not trust Baylan or Shin. Not only has Baylan proven to Thrawn to be unreliable because of his softness towards the Jedi, but we believe that the dark side use plays a major factor in Thrawn's dislike of him. Thrawn tolerates the witches of Dathomiri because they're loyal, and have little ambition besides what Thrawn can offer. Even Sidious has said as much before, that the Night Sisters lack the vision necessary to rule on their own. But in conclusion, Thrawn hates Dark Jedi and the dark side because he despises the hierarchy that it established. He hated their pride and focus on soul glory, and believed it very dangerous to be surrounded by those with extremely high ambition. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on Thrawn's comments about the dark side itself? Do you agree with him or not? And as always, thank you for giving us some of your time, and may the Force be with you.